Alright, so a lot of you guys know that the Roland P-6 has been out for over a year now, and ever since then I've been cooking up with this thing. I've taken a break from cooking up on it. I thought about selling it. I took it to live shows, took it across the country, and over that time I've realized a few things that I love and that I hate about this device. So in this video I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans on the pros and cons of this device, the Roland P-6. So first things first, this is packed with some pretty good effects. One of my favorite effects is going to have to be the super filter. It's really clean and perfect for cleaning up different samples, one shots, and it feels like no matter how much you boost the resonance, it's really hard to have too much resonance and to make your ears bleed. Compared to the other filter on here, or say even on the SP404, the filter and drive on there, sometimes the resonance can be a little bit too much, a little bit too overpowering, and I'm really happy that this has the super filter. Touching more on the effects, things like the drive, the cassette sim, the vinyl sim, I love using those to add character to my sounds, whether if it's to the samples or to the drums. Using those effects can really make your samples sound warm and gritty in a musical way. Another good thing about this is its portability due to its size. It doesn't weigh too much. It literally fits in my pocket, and I can just go on about my day, do whatever I need to do. Now, while that might not be the safest decision, for these knobs, it's still pretty cool if you're on the go, or if you're traveling, or say if you wanted to lug it around in a bag. It's not going to add too many pounds to your luggage. Now next, I feel like it only makes sense, but the fact that this has a battery in it that's rechargeable. If this wasn't battery powered and I had to keep it tethered to a power adapter, that would just be annoying. Another thing I love about this is the workflow. It's pretty fun and really sparks ideas. I think Roland did a great job by including different features that I actually tend to use a lot. Things like the gate, lo-fi, the delete button of course, and loop. This also holds a lot of value compared to its competitors, like maybe the SP404, the Teenage Engineering KO2, or even the more affordable Teenage Engineering PO33. It's really packed with features that some of those don't even have, including the SP404 Mark II, and that's way more expensive. Now, while this might not be applicable to everybody, the chop and pitch features are actually really good for boom bap, hip hop production. And touching more on the pitch, if you pitch samples up before recording them in here, and maybe add a effect to them like cassette sim, vinyl sim, or maybe even lo-fi, and pitch them back down, you get some really good textures. Shout out to DiBiase for shining light on that old school technique. Now, another good pro about this device is that you can actually build some really good drum sounds or even drum kits with this device. Utilizing the built-in mixer, filters, or even just layering sounds, if you get creative or just have a little bit of know-how, you can surprisingly build deep drum kits with this. Now, I'm going to touch back on this later, but the interface is actually pretty simple once you learn it. Another great thing about the Roland P-6 is that you can easily incorporate it into your existing setup, whether if you're going to use this for samples or just for drums, or if you want to pair it up via the MIDI. It's pretty easy to just find a simple way to throw this into your setup. Now, while I don't have too much experience using the granular engine on here, you can make some pretty nice textures, whether if you want to call them creative or weird. That is something that I plan on diving more into eventually. And it's pretty cool to just have that option built into here when it feels like it already has so much to offer. Now, I'll also like to add that this is a great entry point sampler for beginners. While you won't have access to the most advanced or even useful features, you'll have more than enough to create a beat and have fun. And last for the pros, I feel like the Roland P-6 really shines for that old school hip hop boom bap style of music. Thanks to things like the lo-fi, the pitch feature like we mentioned earlier, and I haven't even touched on this yet, but the fact that you can change the sample rates of the samples that you put into here. So now with all the good out the way, let's start talking about the things that I dislike, or the cons of the Roland P-6. Now let's just get it out the way. This screen is atrocious. It was my worst enemy when I first picked this up and was trying to learn how to operate and navigate this device. And sometimes it can just make the music making experience a little bit less enjoyable due to all the menu diving. But like I said, the interface is pretty simple once you learn it. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but sometimes I feel like the master output volume isn't as loud. Well, I usually do get it loud enough to where I need it, I have to usually just crank it all the way to the max. Now maybe I'm just acting for too much, but sometimes I like to have that extra wiggle room or that extra space of volume just in case I need to make things even louder. Now I was going to include this one into the pros, but it feels a little bit more right to include this into the cons, and that's that it has a lot of limitations. While I personally enjoy limitations because it forces me to think, and maybe I don't mind the limitations because I have other pieces of gear to use to kind of work around those limitations. If this was the only thing you had, those limitations would be pretty crucial because you wouldn't have another way to work around them. And speaking of limitations, the limited sample time that you get on here in memory. I feel like the few seconds that it offers, you can work some magic with it, but it would just be so much nicer if I had a few more seconds. If I just had a little bit more sample time when I was in 44.1 kilohertz or even the lower sample rates, it would just be nicer to have a little bit more time for me to sample things into this device. Now this one is actually a big one in my opinion, and that's the fact that it doesn't have a full sequencer or beat arrangement mode. Meaning you'll still need some form of a DAW or external gear to actually compose and put together a full track. Another thing I kind of don't like about this is how many buttons or how many different things I have to press just to do one thing. Like I said earlier, this thing requires a lot of menu diving, so that means you're going to be holding shift a lot, you're going to be doing these different combos, and you're going to have to memorize them if you actually want to have a decent workflow. And it also means that you're going to find yourself pulling up the manual guide even a year after you've purchased it, unfortunately. Now I probably already touched on this, but the user interface is confusing at first. I know I said it's pretty simple once you learn it, but when I first picked this up, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know how to operate things. I didn't know how to read the different symbols that would be on this screen. And it just felt really confusing and at times even frustrating because I didn't know how to really navigate it. Now maybe this is why I haven't used a granular synth yet, but sometimes I feel like it just makes samples sound a little harsh. What do you guys think? Okay, now this is another one, file management. Putting sounds in here can be as simple as sampling them in via the line in or even the mic, but if you use the app that Roland provides for the Roland P-6, file management kind of becomes tedious as well. If you want to put samples in that way, you have to put them in per bank. So that means you have to turn it on holding a specific button, put in your samples only from one bank, import those samples, save them on, turn it off, turn it back on, doing that same combo to activate the app mode or whatever so it can read it on the computer and go on to the next bank and do that. So like I said, I've made beats and I've taken this to perform, but it's really a nightmare at times whenever I want to switch from live performance mode to production mode, just because of how tedious and time consuming I know it's going to be whenever I want to go ahead and switch between those modes. Now while this doesn't really apply to me, I feel like this device doesn't really apply well with the typical trap producer or EDM producer. Now if you want to get crispy, pristine sounding productions, this is not the device for that. Sometimes the high end can either sound harsh or not crispy and clear enough. Even with the built-in filters, super filters, bus effects, it can get kind of hard to really nail the high end. Now I don't know if you guys feel like this, but I felt like learning the actual effects, the bus effects, the reverbs, the built-in delays, it kind of took a little bit of a learning curve, a little bit, maybe like a week or a couple weeks to really grasp how to use them. Now touching back on the limitations, while I did say that, limitations can be good and that once you learn the device, it becomes pretty simple. But that's the thing, it really does start to feel limited, almost like you hit a brick wall once you do learn how to actually operate and navigate throughout this device. Now who else feels like this? I really like the fact that you can plug in lines through the top, but sometimes that scares me because what if I step on a line and it just ruins the internals for that jack? I feel like sometimes if I'm not careful, I could really do some damage to this thing and really mess up the internals. And while it doesn't have too much wiggle room, it still has a little bit, and I would like for it to have no wiggle room. So I just tend to feel a little bit anxious whenever I have a lot of things plugged in here because I don't want to accidentally step on cables, mess up the input jack, and now I just have a whole bunch of wiggle room and possibly my sound gets cut out whenever I move the cable. But yeah, that's how I feel about the Roland P-6. Those are my pros and cons to owning this device. Let me know what you guys think about it. Do you guys agree with the things I said? Do you guys have your own different pros and cons that you guys have discovered throughout owning this device, or even after you sold it? Because I know a few of you guys out there sold your P6s. But that's going to do it for this video, you guys. I'm going to get out of here. If all you cared about was the Roland P6, you can go ahead and get out of here. But if you guys care about the channel and me, make sure you guys check out the lowkeyshop.com. I just released my latest sample pack, the 12 rooms. It has 12 compositions in it, not 20-second, 30-second loops, but actual compositions in it that tells a story. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you visit the lowkeyshop.com. And with that being said, you guys, I'm actually going to get out of here. Peace out.